Cyprian of Carthage, De Dominica Oratione, Episode 20. Quae Dominus in Evangelio suo ponet et dicit, homines duo ascenderant in templum ordrare, unus Parasias et unus publicanus. Cyprian continues discussing the events of Luke 18 and the Lord's parable about the Pharisee and the tax collector, the publican. Quae, which leads off the sentence, is neuter, plural, and accusative. It is very common in Latin to begin a sentence with a relative pronoun, something that we wouldn't normally do in English. Which things the Lord, in his own gospel, in Evangelio suo, places, ponet. Ponet is a present tense. This is a third singular from the third conjugation verb pono, ponere, and it's indicative and active. These are both present tense because it's present tense or historical present for vivid narration, for use in vivid narration. These things, meaning what has come before, all of those items, the Lord in his gospel, namely Luke, places or sets there, and he says, and now we have the quote and Cyprian's translation of the quote. Two people, two men, homines duo, masculine, plural, and nominative. Two men, ascenderunt, ascended or went up to the temple to pray. I said a moment ago that this was Cyprian's translation, but I don't know really whether Cyprian got this from the Latin elsewhere. The Vulgate did not exist in his time, but there were many old Latin versions of the Bible. Certainly Cyprian had many options. I'm not a scholar of Cyprian, but someone no doubt knows. Two men ascended, they went up, because the temple was on an elevation in Jerusalem. They went up toward the temple. Templum here is neuter singular accusative, because the accusative is used with the preposition in to indicate direction. And here orare is being used to express purpose. With ascenderunt, they went up to pray. They went up for prayer. This is not a strictly classical usage. The infinitive is not used in classical Latin, at least not regularly, to express purpose. Instead, we would use ut with a subjunctive or a number of other constructions. But this is not typically classical. So two men went up to pray to the temple, and now as an appositive we have unus Parasias et unus publicanus. This nominative phrase is in apposition to homines duo. One of them was a Pharisee, and one was a publican. A more common way to express this is unus Parasias et alter. The one was a Pharisee and the other a publican. I'm speculating or hypothesizing that unus is used here because we're drawing specific attention to members of different groups. There was one Pharisee and there was one publican, whereas unus and alter would be used of members of the same group. That is, to distinguish between members of the same group. And finally, an unknown artist's rendering of the temple in Jesus' time, the temple rebuilt by Herod, not Solomon's temple, but a much later one, as it may have looked.